This is an interesting question because if you speed up learning, you can last time at school.
And if you
And if you learn really fast, you probably wouldn't have to go to school at all.
Now,
When I was young,
school was sort of
a school was sort of okay, but I found quite often the school got in the way of learning. So I had this question in my how do you learn faster? And this began when I was very young. When I was 11 years old, I wrote a letter to Soviet Union asking about hypnopedia. This is sleep learning. And recorder, you put it beside your bed. Turns up the middle of the night. You select it. In this field, you're supposed to learn from this. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. But Hypnopedia did open the door to research on other areas. Incredible discovery about learning began with that first question. I went on from there, competition about psychology, and I've been involved in psychology management for the rest of my life up until this point. In 1981, I took myself to China, and I decided I was going to be native level in Chinese inside 2 years. Now you need to understand that in 1981, everybody thought Chinese was really difficult, and then Western could study for 10 years or more and never really get very good at it. I also different idea, which was taking all of the conclusions from psychological research up to the point and applying them to the learning process. What was really cool was that in 6 months I was fluent in Mandarin and took a little bit longer to get up to native. But I looked around and I saw all of these people from different cultures struggling terribly with Chinese. I saw Chinese people struggling terribly to learn English and other languages and refined down to how can you help a normal adult learn a new language quickly, easily, and effectively. Now this is a really important question in today's world. We have massive challenges with environment, we have massive challenges with social dislocation, with wars also the thing going on, and if we can't communicate, we are really going to have difficulty solving these problems. Speak each other's languages. This is really important. The question is, how do you do that? Well, it's actually really easy. You look around for people who can already do it. You look for situations where are already working, and then you identify the principles and apply them. It's called modern language learning and modern language learning for about 50 to 20 years now. And my conclusion, my observation from this is that any adult can learn a second language into fluency inside 6 months. Now, when I say this, most people think I'm crazy. This is not possible. So let me remind everybody of history of human progress. It's all about expanding our limits. In 1980, everybody believes that learning one mark in 4 minutes was impossible, and then from there it got shorter and shorter. 100 years ago, everybody believes that heavy stuff doesn't fly, except it does. We all know this. How does heavy stuff fly? We organize the material using principles that we have learned from observing nature, further in this case. And today, we've gone even further. So you can fly a car. You can buy off this conference $100,000 in the world that fly in different ways, which we've learned from school. All you need to do is copy what a flying squirrel does, build a suit called wingsuit and a squirrel. Now, a lot of people, I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people think they can draw. However, there's a principle, 5 principles that you can apply to learn to draw, and you can actually learn to draw in 5 days. So, if you draw like this, you learn these principles for 5 days and apply them, and after 5 days, you can draw something like this. Now, I know this is true because that was my first drawing, 5 days applying these principles that I was able to do. And I looked at this and wow. So that's how I looked, and I'm concentrating so intensely my brain is exploding. So anybody can learn to draw in 5 days, and in the same way, with the same logic, Anybody can learn second language in 6 months. How? There are 5 principles and 7 actions. There may be a few more, but these are absolutely core. And before I get into those, I just wanted to talk about 2 myths. I know this pair.
Before I get into those, I just want to talk about 2 myths. I want to dispel 2 myths.
Dispel 2 myths. The first is that you need talent. Let me tell you about Zoe. Zoe came from Australia when the Holland was trying to learn Dutch, struggling extremely a great deal. And finally, people were saying you are completely useless, you are not talented, give up, you're
not talented, give up, you're a waste of time.
You're a waste of time, which was very good. And 5 principles. She moved to Brazil. You should apply them. In 6 months, she was fluent in Portuguese. So talent doesn't matter. People also think that immersion is a new country is a way to learn a language. But look at the Westerners who's been 10 years who don't speak a word of Chinese. Look at all the Chinese living in America, Australia, Canada. Being a 10-20 years, they don't speak any English. Immersion per se does not work. Why? Because a drowning man cannot learn to swim. When you don't speak, you're like a baby. Which all adults stuff over your head. So, what are the 5 principles? First, 4 words. Attention meaning relevant to memory. Attention meaning relevant. Attention meaning relevant to memory. And this interconnecting is in very important way, especially when you talk about learning. Come with me on a journey through a forest. You go on a walk through a forest and you see something like this. Little marks on the tree. Maybe you pay attention, maybe you don't. You go another 50 meters and you see this. You should be paying attention. Another 50 meters, if you haven't been paying attention, you see this and you're paying attention. And you've just learned this. It's important, it's relevant because it means that this and anything that is related, any information related to your survivor is stuff that you're gonna pay attention and therefore remember it. Related your personal goal, then you're going to pay attention to it.
Then you're going to pay attention to it.
It's relevant. You're going to remember it. Attention meaning relevant memory.
So
the first principle for learning a language is focus on language content that is relevant to you, which brings us to tools. We master tools by using tools, and we learn tools the fastest when they are relevant to us. So let me share a story. A keyboard is a tool. Typing Chinese a certain way, there are methods for this. Test a tool. I had colleagues many years ago who went to Thursday night, 2 hours each time practicing at home. She's been 9 months and she did not learn to type Chinese. And one night we had a crisis. We had 48 hours to deliver a training manual in Chinese. She got the job. I can guarantee you, in 48 hours she will learn to type Chinese because it's relevant, it's meaningful, and it's important. Using a tool to create value. So the second principle for learning a language is to use your language as a tool to communicate right from day one, as a kid does. When I first arrived in Chinese, I didn't speak a word of Chinese. And on my second week, I gotta take a train overnight. I spent 8 hours sitting in the dining car talking to one of one of the guards on the train. He took an interest from me some reason. And we just had it all night in Chinese. We have drawing pictures and making movements with his hands and facial expression, and piece by piece of piece understood more and more. But what was really cool was 2 weeks later, when people were talking Chinese around me, I was understanding some of this, and I hadn't even made any effort to learn that. What had happened is all of it that night on the train, which brings us to the third principle. When you first understand the message, then you will acquire the language. You will acquire. And then you will acquire the language unconsciously. And this is really, really well documented now.
This is really
well documented. Now, something called comprehensive input. 20 or 30 years of research on this. Stephen Crash, a leader in the field, has published all sorts of these different studies. And this is just from one of them. Upper bar showed scores in different tests for language. Grammar-focused language teaching. Comprehensive input approach.
And the purple people were people who had learned grammar and formal study.
Comprehensive input. So comprehension works. Comprehension is key. (10분) 넘었다. 10분 넘었으니까 오늘 할 거 끝. 영어 공부 끝.